Get a job and stop being a burden on us. My daughter-in-law, Scarlett Evans, snapped at me in the middle of dinner, in front of the whole family. I could barely suppress a laugh. What she didn't know was that I had $5 million in my bank account. So, I looked her directly in the eyes and said, "Honey, you might want to start looking for another place to live. It's good to have you here. Stay until the end of my story and tell me what city you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this reaches. My name is Aurora Riley, and for the past 3 years, I've been living a lie. Not one you tell others, but one you tell yourself over and over, just to see who people truly are when they believe you have nothing left to offer." The dinner invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning. My son, Lucas's, voice sounded strained on the phone, as it always did when Scarlett was around. "Mom, want to come over for dinner on Friday? Is Scarlett making her famous meatloaf?" I almost chuckled. That woman could barely boil water without scorching the pot, but over the years, I'd learned to keep my mouth shut. "Sounds great, honey. What time should I be there?" "Around 7, and Mom," he hesitated for a second, and I could almost hear Scarlett's harsh whisper dictating what he should say. "Could you try to dress a little nicer this time? You know how Scarlett likes everything to be presentable." Presentable. I stared at my reflection in the hallway mirror after hanging up. My gray hair was pulled back in a simple bun. No makeup. The same worn-out sweater I'd worn countless times to their house. That had been my style for 3 years. The grieving widow, barely scraping by in her small apartment, living off the occasional help from her son. Friday evening arrived with the bone-chilling cold of October. I walked the 6 blocks to their house, the same route I'd taken countless times since Caleb, my husband, passed away. The house still looked exactly the same as when I'd bought it for them 7 years ago as a wedding gift, though they never knew that. Lucas opened the door with his practiced smile. "Hi Mom, come in, come in." He gave me a quick hug that felt more like a formality than genuine affection. At 34, my son had become a man I barely recognized. He was still handsome. He was still my son. But something was missing in his gaze. Something I hadn't seen since he married Scarlett. Scarlett's voice cut through the atmosphere, as welcoming as a knife. She appeared framed in the dining room doorway. Platinum blonde, perfectly styled hair, a designer dress that probably cost more than most people paid in rent. At 29, she had that striking beauty that demanded attention and respect, though she had never earned either. "Hello, Scarlett. Thank you for having me." She surveyed me from head to toe with barely concealed disapproval. "Does this sound familiar to you?" The dining table was set with their best china, the kind only brought out when someone important was visiting. But it was clear from the start. Lucas and Scarlett had coordinated everything except my place setting. An old plate, a cheap discount store glass, a fork with a bent tine. Small details that spoke volumes about my place in that house. "Mom, sit here." Lucas pointed to the chair at the end of the table, furthest from them. I sat down without a word, hands folded in my lap, as Scarlett served the meatloaf as if she were on a cooking show. "I hope you like it," she said. Her tone made it clear she didn't care. "It's an old family recipe from my grandmother." I tasted it. Too much salt, undercooked, nothing special. "It's delicious," I said anyway. The first 20 minutes were slow, forced small talk. Lucas spoke about his work at the marketing agency, conveniently omitting the promotion he hadn't received. Scarlett took over the rest of the conversation, her yoga classes, her shopping days, her brilliant ideas for redecorating the living room. "We're thinking of getting new furniture," she said, cutting her meatloaf into perfect cubes. "Something more modern. What we have now is just so out of style." I remembered helping them choose that furniture when they first moved in. Back then, Scarlett couldn't say enough about how perfect it was. But that was before she decided everything in her world, the furniture, the decor, even her mother-in-law, needed to be replaced. "Sounds expensive," I said casually. Scarlett narrowed her eyes. "Well, some people care about how their home looks. Some people know that you have to spend money for quality." The comment hit its mark. I was neither beautiful nor high quality, nor anything worth spending money on. I took another bite of the sad meatloaf and remained silent. Actually, Mom, Lucas began, his voice full of doubt. We wanted to talk to you about something. I put my fork down and waited. Scarlett leaned forward with an expression she probably thought was sympathetic. Aurora, we're really worried about you. You're living all alone in that tiny apartment, barely getting by. It's been 3 years since Caleb passed. Haven't you recovered yet? I'm fine, I said softly. Really? Scarlett's voice shifted to that falsely calm tone she used when she wanted to sound helpful but was really just condescending. You can barely afford your rent. You wear second-hand clothes. You don't even have a car. From her perspective, all of that was true. What they didn't know was that every decision had been a conscious one. I had paid cash for that small apartment. The second-hand clothes were part of the act. The car I no longer had was my own choice. I like to walk. It's not about money. I'm managing. Managing isn't really living, Mom, Lucas interjected. And for a second, I saw a spark of genuine concern in his voice. It gave me a fleeting hope that the son I once knew was still there, buried under Scarlett's influence. But she attacked again. Look, Aurora, we can't keep bailing you out. Lucas works long hours, and we have to think about what's best for our future. We're planning to start a family soon, and we need to be smart. I looked at my son, expecting him to say something that might suggest his help mainly consisted of an occasional dinner or a birthday card, but he said nothing. Encouraged by his silence, Scarlett continued, what we're getting at is, maybe it's time you found a job. You're only 64. Plenty of people your age still work at Walmart. They always need someone to greet people at the door. This suggestion hung heavy and insulting in the air. A greeter at Walmart. After 2 decades of running a thriving business with Caleb, after helping build enough wealth to buy the entire neighborhood, she was now suggesting I stand at the entrance for minimum wage, greeting strangers. A job, I repeated slowly. Yes, Scarlett said. Her face glowed as if she had just eradicated poverty. Something to give you direction, you know? A purpose. A little independence. Self-respect. Self-respect. The irony hit me so hard I almost laughed. I thought back to when I'd helped her pay off her parents' debts. Scarlett, who had never worked a day in her life, was now lecturing me on self-respect. I've been thinking about your situation, Scarlett said, visibly proud of herself. And I think I've identified the problem. You've become too accustomed to relying on others, on Lucas. That's not good for any of us. I felt something icy spread inside me. It wasn't anger, but something quieter and more dangerous. Really? That's how you see me, Scarlett? I asked. Dependent. Well, yes. Scarlett looked around for confirmation. I mean, let's be honest, you depend on us for everything. Every time you can't pay a bill, every time something breaks in your apartment. Who do you call? The answer was, no one. I hadn't asked them for a single dollar since Caleb's funeral, but for Scarlett, my mere existence was clearly too much. Understood, I said softly. Don't take it personally, she said, now more confident in what she was saying. Lucas and I are trying to build a life for ourselves. We're young, ambitious, and we can't constantly stress about supporting someone who isn't even trying to help themselves. Not even trying. Those words echoed in my head as I looked at this woman who never had a job, who spent her husband's money on luxury handbags and spa days, who lived in a house without knowing it belonged to me, and was now lecturing me on independence. Scarlett, I said softly. Yes. I looked her directly in the eyes, letting her see something genuine for the first time in years. Something that made her take a step back. You have no idea what's coming for you. The silence that followed was deafening. Lucas shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Scarlett's jaw worked like a fish out of water. Excuse me, she finally said. I stood up slowly but deliberately. Thank you for dinner. The meatloaf was exactly what I expected. I walked to the front door. The sound of my footsteps filled the sudden silence behind me. I heard Scarlett murmur softly, she just threatened me at the door. I turned around. The two of them watched me from the dining room. Lucas looked confused. Scarlett was afraid. Oh, and Scarlett? I added, my hand on the doorknob, about your career advice? What about it? She asked uncertainly. I smiled, but without warmth. Perhaps you should start working on your own resume. 3 days later, Lucas called. I wasn't surprised. Scarlett wouldn't have left him alone until he confronted me about my behavior that evening. I sat by the window in my small apartment with my coffee when the phone rang. Mom. His voice was uncertain, as if he feared I would yell at him. Can we talk? Of course, honey. Do you want to come over? There was a pause. In 3 years, Lucas had never set foot in my apartment. He had offered to help me move, but I had declined. Once, he'd mentioned coming over for coffee, but Scarlett always had an excuse to prevent it. And now, with the possibility of truly seeing how I lived, he hesitated. Yeah, okay. I'll be there in an hour. I spent the hour preparing for what would undoubtedly be the most important conversation with my son in years. I brewed his favorite coffee, that expensive kind I always kept hidden in the back of the cabinet. I put away the financial papers I had been reviewing. I changed out of the second-hand sweater into something nicer. Still simple, but more presentable. When Lucas arrived, he glanced around my apartment with barely disguised pity. 1 bedroom. A cramped kitchen. Furniture that looked like it came from a flea market, which, to be fair, some of it did. The rest I had deliberately chosen to create a specific impression. Mom, this place is... He hesitated. Small, I offered. He wanted to say depressing. I served him coffee in one of the nice cups I usually kept hidden. Another small joy I almost never displayed. He took a sip and was surprised. This coffee is fantastic. I treat myself once in a while. We sat facing each other at my small kitchen table. For a moment, we said nothing. Then Lucas cleared his throat. About Friday night. Scarlett is very upset. She says you threatened her. I looked him directly in the eyes. And what do you think? He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I think there's something about you that I don't understand. You've been acting differently, distant, and then that on Friday night, the way you looked at Scarlett, what you said. What I said was the truth. What does that mean, Mom? You told her she had no idea what was coming. That sounds like a threat. I took a sip of my coffee and chose my words carefully. It wasn't the right time to tell the whole truth, but I could give him a glimpse. Lucas, do you remember what your father used to say about people who mistake kindness for weakness? He said they learn the hard way. Exactly. I placed my cup on the table. For 3 years, I've been kind, patient. I've watched your wife treat me like a burden, something to be managed or ignored. I've listened to her opinions on how I should live, what I should spend my time on, what I should wear, even what I should eat. Lucas looked uncomfortable. She just wants to help, Mom, that's not. Is she trying to help me, or is she trying to erase me in the politest way possible? Let me ask you something. I leaned towards him. When was the last time Scarlett asked me how I was doing? Not about money or bills, but how I was doing as a person. He opened his mouth but said nothing. When was the last time she asked me what I like, what matters to me, who my friends are? When was the last time she treated me like a real human being and not a problem to be solved? Lucas stared into his coffee. It's not. She's not trying to be cruel. The silence between us stretched. Finally, Lucas looked up. So, are you saying you're cutting us off? I'm saying that some people need to learn that choices have consequences. That still sounds like a threat. I stood up and walked to the small bookshelf in the living room. Behind some paperbacks was a folder. I took it and returned to the table. Lucas, I said as I opened it. There's something you need to know about your mother. Inside were bank statements, investment overviews, property deeds, all documents I had kept secret for 3 years, waiting for the right moment. His eyes widened as he began to see what was before him. Mom, what is this? This is me. The real me. I watched his expression as he flipped through page after page. Account balances with numbers he could never have imagined. Investment portfolios worth millions. Deeds for houses, businesses, and land in 3 different states. "I don't understand," he whispered. "But you live here, in this small apartment. You buy second-hand clothes. You don't even have a car." "Because I wanted to." I closed the folder and looked at the man I had raised, loved, and slowly watched disappear under his wife's influence. Because I needed to know who would still love me when they thought I had nothing. These words hit him like a punch. I saw him understand the past 3 years. The truth behind everything. "You've been testing us." "I've been protecting myself." "From what?" "From people like your wife." Lucas's hands trembled as he placed his coffee cup on the table. "Mom, this is crazy. You let us think you were broke." "I let Scarlett think that." "You let Scarlett think that." "But that's not fair." "I let Scarlett show exactly who she is. And yes, she did that over and over again for 3 years. But I'm your son." "Yes, you are. And I needed to know if you were still my son, or if you had become someone else." He winced as if I had slapped him. "That's not fair." "Oh, really? When was the last time you called? When was the last time you invited me to something without Scarlett pulling the strings? When was the last time you defended me when she was cruel?" Each question was like a dagger, and I saw them land. "I didn't notice. I didn't think she was cruel." "Or did you choose not to see it because it was easier that way?" We were silent for a long time. Finally, Lucas spoke, barely a whisper. "And what happens now?" I leaned back, observing his expression carefully. My son had the same dark brown eyes as his father, and that same gentle way. At least before Scarlett came along. The same child who used to pick wildflowers and tell me I was the most beautiful mom in the world. Now, that child had become a man who stayed silent while his wife tore me apart in front of others, without a single word to stop her. "Now," I said softly, "we're going to see if you remember the man you once were." "And Scarlett?" he asked. I smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. "Scarlett will learn that not everyone is as helpless as they seem." "Mom, what are you going to do?" "Justice," I told him. "The kind that takes a long time, but always comes." Lucas pushed his chair back and walked to the window. "This is insane. Do you really think you can punish her for 3 years of marital problems?" 3 years of calculated cruelty, I clarified. 3 years of disrespect, while she lived off the salary you earn only thanks to the network of contacts your father and I built over decades. That made him pause. "Wait, what? Did you think that marketing job fell out of the sky? Your father pulled strings to open that door for you. We've been working behind the scenes for you since you left State University." His face went ashen. "So, how much of my life has been a lie?" "None of it was a lie, honey, but some things were protected." I walked up to him and placed my hand on his arm. "I love you, Lucas. I loved you before you even opened your eyes for the first time. But loving doesn't mean allowing myself to be treated poorly, even if it's my own flesh and blood." He turned to me, and for a second, I saw the child I used to put to bed at night. "What should I do then?" "That's for you to decide, but let me ask you something. In 3 years of marriage, did Scarlett ever encourage you to spend time with me? Did she ever suggest that I meant more to you than just financial support?" He opened his mouth to answer but closed it again without saying anything. I nodded. I gently squeezed his arm. "A storm is coming, honey. And when it does, you'll have to choose a side." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise," I replied. "And unlike others in your life, I keep mine." I gave them a week to digest everything I had told Lucas. A week for him to truly look at his wife and ask himself if he liked what he saw. A week for Scarlett to reevaluate my last words at the table and try to decipher what I was planning. The call came on a Wednesday morning. Scarlett's voice ripped through the silence of my apartment like a whip. "Aurora, we need to talk right now." "Good morning to you too, Scarlett." "Don't even start. Lucas told me everything. Your little act, the money." I leaned back in my favorite armchair with my coffee and smiled. Really? Oh, yes. And now I want to know what kind of twisted game you've been playing here.
What kind of game do you think I've been playing?
Her voice grew shriller. You let us think you were penniless. You just sat there and let me pity you. You let me try to help you, and all the while you were sitting on a fortune. Pity. Offer help. The way she rewrote the past was impressive, even for Scarlett. Oh, really? And how exactly did you help me, honey? We invited you to dinner. We included you in family events. Do you mean the dinners where I had to eat off mismatched plates while you lectured me about working at a discount store? Silence. So, are you coming over tonight? We're going to sort this out. Yes, at 7 p.m. And Aurora, you owe us some answers. The call ended. I put the phone away and finished my coffee, contemplating the upcoming conversation. Then I went to my closet and pushed aside the second-hand sweaters and bargain clothes. In the back, carefully stored in garment bags, hung the clothes of another life. The life that reflected who I truly was. I chose a simple, elegant black dress, real jewelry, no cheap imitations, shoes that probably cost more than Scarlett's entire monthly shoe budget. As I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who could have bought and sold everything Scarlett owned without batting an eye. I was done with the act. I arrived at their house promptly at 7 p.m., the same house I had bought for them 7 years ago. A fact they never knew. The same house whose mortgage I had quietly paid through a management company, so they thought Lucas's salary was covering it. Lucas opened the door, and his eyes widened. Mom, you look different. Like yourself, he mumbled, like when Dad was still with us. Scarlett appeared behind him, her face hard as stone. She was dressed as if going to war, in a flashy designer dress that surely cost a fortune. But next to the calm simplicity of true wealth, she looked like a child pretending to be an adult. Well, well, she sneered, examining me. So the poor widow had a decent wardrobe hidden away. And a lot more, I said, unfazed. We went into the living room, the same living room I had helped them design when they first moved in. I sat on the sofa I had chosen for them, in the house I paid for, surrounded by the life I had made possible. All right, Scarlett said, sitting down like a prosecutor ready to read her indictment. Let's hear it, the whole truth. What do you want to know? Everything. How much money do you have? Why did you lie to us? You're just trying to find out who's really on your side, friend. Scarlett let out a cold, sharp laugh. I'm your daughter-in-law, not your friend. Family doesn't betray family, does it? Then explain why you told the neighbors I was going crazy and that you were worried about my mental health. Scarlett's face lost all color. Lucas turned and stared at her. I never said that. Did you tell Mrs. Miller that I was showing signs of dementia? Did you imply to the mailman that I would soon need to be institutionalized? You spun this story for months about my mental decline. That's not true. Or did you just not think I'd find out? Lucas whispered, barely audible. Scarlett, is that true? She turned to him, her eyes blazing. I was just worried. She was saying strange things, acting peculiar, dressing like a homeless person. I thought it could get really bad. Or, I said softly, were you preparing the ground to have me declared mentally incompetent and thus get your hands on what you thought was Caleb's life insurance? The words hung in the room like a knife. Scarlett opened her mouth, closed it, and opened it again. That's crazy, she finally said. Why would I do something like that? I reached into my handbag and pulled out an envelope. Because 3 months ago, you contacted an elder law attorney. You asked how to apply for conservatorship for a family member showing signs of mental confusion. Lucas jumped up. I opened the envelope and pulled out printed emails, call logs, and notes from consultations. You wanted to know how quickly the process could move and if it could be expedited if the person had significant assets. Where did you get that? Scarlett's voice was barely a whisper. Money opens many doors, my dear. Even the ones you thought were locked. Lucas looked at her as if he no longer recognized the woman in front of him. Scarlett, please tell me that's not true. It's not what it seems, she said excitedly. I just wanted to understand our options in case she really got worse. How strange, I said. The lawyer's notes show that you were particularly interested in whether conservatorship would give you access to bank accounts and investments. You explicitly asked if the assets could be liquidated for the patient's benefit. Scarlett's face went ashen. She sank into a chair, her hands trembling. Mom, Lucas said, his voice high-pitched. Please tell me that's not real. I'm afraid it is, honey. But why? Why would she do something like that? I turned to Scarlett, who was staring at the floor, feeling something akin to pity, though she didn't deserve it. Because she never truly loved you. She loved the idea of what you could provide her. And when it became clear that your income couldn't sustain the lifestyle she desired, she started looking for money elsewhere. That's not true, Scarlett mumbled. Oh, really? I asked. Then how do you explain the hidden credit card debt? The impulsive purchases paid with cash advances, the jewelry you pawned and replaced with fakes. Lucas's face was chalk white. What? I pulled out another folder. She's been living beyond her means for the past 2 years. She has over $800,000 in credit card debt you knew nothing about. Is that true, Scarlett? Lucas asked. She finally looked up. Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't tears of remorse. It was pure rage. You cursed, vindictive manipulator. She snarled at me. Did you plan all this? I didn't plan anything, my dear. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your actions. She stood up, somewhat unsteadily. You think you're so clever, don't you? You think you've won. Won what? I asked. You wanted to destroy my marriage, and you did it. Congratulations. I stood up, and in that moment, the timid version of me disappeared. In her place stood the woman who had built a business from the ground up with her husband, who had made million-dollar decisions without hesitation, who had never shied away from a fight. I didn't destroy your marriage, Scarlett. You did. The moment you decided my son was just a platform for you to achieve something better. I love Lucas, she insisted. You love what Lucas represents. Stability, prestige, an easy life. But you don't love him. How dare you? She hissed. How dare I what? Speak the truth, call you out? I walked towards her until she had no choice but to look me in the eyes. Do you want to know what's really going to happen now, Scarlett? What? You're going to pack your bags and leave this house tonight. She let out a shrill, almost hysterical laugh. You can't kick me out of my own house. Oh yes, I can, I said, pulling one last document from my bag. The deed to this property, with my name clearly listed as the rightful owner. This house belongs to me. It always has. Lucas, you and your wife have been living here as my guests for 7 years. The silence that followed was suffocating. Lucas stared at the deed as if he couldn't comprehend what he was seeing. Mom, what does that mean? It means your wife has 30 minutes to pack a suitcase and leave my house. Scarlett's hands trembled. Her face was a mixture of rage and fear. You can't do this. I have rights. Rights as a tenant? You're not a tenant. You're a guest who overstayed her welcome. I folded the deed and put it away. 30 minutes, Scarlett. After that, I'm calling the police and having you removed for trespassing. Lucas, she said, her voice breaking. Say something. This is our house. But Lucas was still staring at the spot where the deed had been, as if the truth was just sinking in. Lucas, she shrieked. Finally he looked at her, and it was as if he was seeing things clearly for the first time in years. Get out, he said softly. What? Get out of my mother's house. Scarlett's face crumpled, but I felt no triumph, only an exhausted relief that this phase was over. This isn't over, she spat, full of venom. You think you've won, but this isn't over. I smiled, making sure she saw how little her threats meant to me. Oh yes, it is over, my dear. This is just the beginning of what happens when someone mistakes my kindness for weakness. She stormed off in a rage, up the stairs. I heard drawers being slammed. Things flying. Her angry sobs echoed. Lucas and I remained there in the living room, surrounded by the wreckage of his marriage and the chaos of 3 years of lies finally coming to light. "Mom," he said after a while.
Yes. I'm sorry. I know, my son.
And now? I walked to the window, looked out at the quiet street, and thought about second chances and the price of forgiveness. Now we'll see if what was lost can be rebuilt. The next morning, the phone rang. First, it was my sister-in-law, Harper Miller, Caleb's sister. Her tone was sharp, full of judgment. "Aurora, what in the world is wrong with you? Scarlett called me last night, crying. She said you kicked her out of her own home." I sat in my small apartment, still playing the role for now, sipping coffee from a faded mug, as Harper ranted. "Why?" I asked calmly. "She said you lied about money the whole time, pretending to be poor when you have a fortune. Aurora, this kind of behavior isn't normal." "Isn't it?" "Apparently not. And now you supposedly kicked a young woman out of her home over some family drama? That's ridiculous. Caleb would be ashamed." That stung, because there was a time when Harper's opinion mattered to me. In the first years of my marriage, she felt like a sister, until Scarlett ruined that too. "Harper, did Scarlett tell you about the lawyer she met with to have me declared mentally incompetent?" "No." "And about the hidden debt of over $800,000 she accumulated?" "What are you talking about?" "Ask her, after you're done pitying her. Ask her what she really wanted from my bank account." I hung up before she could say anything else. The phone rang again immediately. This time it was Evelyn Miller, Caleb's other sister, just as outraged, just as accusatory, just as blind to Scarlett's true face. By lunchtime, 6 different family members had called me. All repeating the same script: poor Scarlett, the victim of a hurt, vengeful mother-in-law who had lost her mind. I listened to each of them. I made mental notes about who said what, and I barely defended myself. Let them talk, let them show how quickly they would turn their backs on their own family just because someone told them a well-staged, sad story. The worst call came from Evan, Harper's son, whom I had helped put through State University just 5 years ago. "Aunt Aurora," he said in that cautious, calculating tone. "I've been talking to a few people about what's happening. Your behavior lately? The family is worried you might be suffering from early-onset dementia or something that's affecting your judgment." I slowly placed my coffee cup on the table. Who exactly is commenting on my mental health? Well, Scarlett told us some things. Strange behaviors, paranoia, accusing people, and the whole thing about kicking her out. "Evan, let me ask you something. Who paid for your last year at State U?" "You did. What does that have to do with it? Just answer." "My parents helped. I had loans." "Your parents gave $16,000. I covered the other $45,000. Silence. "I also paid for your sister's wedding, your mother's breast cancer treatments when insurance wouldn't cover them, and the down payment for your first house. You know that. So, if you want to talk about me losing my mind, maybe ask yourself if someone with dementia would remember all that so clearly." He ended the call without another word. The pattern was now obvious. Scarlett hadn't left silently. She had launched a full-blown campaign to ruin me, playing the innocent victim and portraying me as a crazy, vengeful old woman. Like a slow-acting poison, her version of events spread throughout the family tree. 2 days later, Lucas called. His voice sounded tired, exhausted. "Mom, can we meet? We need to talk." "Sure. Where?" "Not at the house. Scarlett is calling everyone. The whole family. It's a mess." We met in a small downtown cafe, one of those quiet places where you could talk without being noticed. Lucas looked terrible, as if he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red, his shirt crumpled, and his hair, always perfectly styled, was a mess. "She ruined me," he said coldly. "What are you talking about?" "Scarlett isn't just twisting the story, she's shamelessly lying. She told my boss you have dementia and that I'm so distracted my performance has declined. She suggested they might want to consider if I'm still suitable for the position." Her calculated cruelty hit me hard. It wasn't enough for her to destroy her own reputation. Now she was going after Lucas's career. What did your boss say? He was understanding. He said I should consider taking some time off for family matters. And what did you tell him? What was I supposed to say? That my wife lied? That she tried to have my mother declared incompetent to get her money, that I live in a house she owns and didn't even know it, that everything I thought about my adult life could be a lie. His voice grew louder. The people around us started looking. I reached out and placed my hand on his.
Lower your voice, honey.
He let out a dry laugh. She was always one step ahead of me. By the time I wanted to react, she had already turned half the family against you and made me look like a fool at work.
Anüting Else.
Now she's at her sister's, crying to anyone who will listen that you destroyed our marriage, that you set her up, that you're dangerous and unstable. I took a sip of my coffee, thinking that Scarlett was smarter than I had given her credit for. She had turned her shame into a weapon. She had turned exposure into an opportunity to portray herself as a victim. There's more, Lucas continued. She's contacted a lawyer. About what? About the house. She says she has tenant rights, that she can't just be thrown out without due legal process. She also says you forced her to leave. And what did the lawyer say? That it's futile. But that's the important thing, Mom. She's not trying to win. She just wants to make our lives hell. I nodded. That was exactly what I expected from someone like Scarlett, the moment she realized everything was slipping away. Show me, I said. What? Show me what she's been telling others. I want to see exactly what we're dealing with. Lucas pulled out his phone and opened her social media. Her posts were carefully staged. Every word was designed to elicit pity. Vague enough not to directly accuse anyone. Going through tough times with family. Sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who hurt you the most. Prayers welcome. Learning hard truths about manipulation and emotional abuse. Grateful for friends who see through the lies. When someone pretends to be something they're not for years, what else are they hiding? Trust your gut. Each post had countless supportive comments from people outraged on her behalf about unnamed relatives who were apparently making her suffer. She's good, I admitted. She's evil. No, she's desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? I handed him back his phone and leaned towards him. The kind that reveal more than they intended. Look at the pattern, Lucas. What's missing from all her posts? He scrolled again, frowning. I don't see it. She never once says she loves you. She talks about betrayal, about lies, about manipulation. But not once does she say that the separation from her husband breaks her heart. Not once does she say she misses her husband. The truth hit him hard. Why doesn't she? Why? Because she never did. That's not a broken heart, honey. That's anger at being exposed. We were silent for a while, processing how far Scarlett had gone and the damage she was trying to cause. What do we do now? Lucas asked. I smiled, making sure he saw that I had not an ounce of pity left for his wife. We let her keep digging. What? Right now, Scarlett thinks she's winning. She believes she's successfully played the perfect victim and portrayed us as the villains. She feels powerful, even satisfied. And how does that help us? Because someone who is too overconfident makes mistakes. They cross a line. They expose themselves. Do you think she'll make a mistake? I don't think so, honey. I know it. I've been watching her for 3 years. I know exactly what she's capable of. I reached into my handbag and pulled out another envelope. This one was heavier than the previous ones. What is this? Insurance. What kind of insurance? The kind that proves everything I'm trying to tell you about your wife. Lucas's eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean that while Scarlett was busy trying to ruin me, I was busy collecting evidence against her. Every suspicious transaction, every lie she concocted, every time she tried to manipulate someone. It's all here. Why didn't you go to the police? Because I wanted her to feel untouchable. I wanted her to dig her own grave. And from everything I've seen in the last few days, she's about to finish it. Mom, what are you going to do? I stood up and gathered my things with the calm that only comes from long preparation. Justice, my son. It's that simple. And what does that mean? I looked at my son, the man I had raised, protected, and almost lost to a woman who never deserved a place in his life. It means the truth. The whole truth, every manipulative, abhorrent side of her. When? Soon, I said, very soon. Because if there's one thing I know about people like Scarlett, it's that they always try to land one last blow. And when she does, we'll be ready. I didn't have to wait long. Scarlett made her fateful move exactly 1 week after our cafe meeting. It was a call that exposed everything. It reached me at 3:30 p.m. in my apartment. I was reviewing some investment files when the phone rang. The number was unknown. Mrs. Riley, this is Detective Sergeant Jenkins from the Atlanta Police Department. My heart sank. Yes, Sergeant. I need to ask you a few questions regarding a report filed against you. It involves allegations of elder abuse and financial exploitation. I carefully set the papers aside. Excuse me, what? A young woman named Scarlett Evans has filed a complaint, claiming she is a victim of financial exploitation by her family members. She also claims that these same individuals are now seeking revenge against her because she tried to protect them. What audacity! Even for Scarlett, this was beneath the level I had thought possible. Detective Sergeant Jenkins, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Can you come down to the station, Mrs. Riley? We'd like to hear your version of the story. Of course. I'll be there in less than an hour. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer, Gavin Reed, the man who had handled all my legal affairs since Caleb's death. Gavin, I need you to meet me at the Atlanta police station immediately. What happened? My ex-daughter-in-law just filed a report against me and my son for elder abuse and financial exploitation. He hesitated for a moment. That's a serious accusation, Aurora. Yes, it is, and it's completely fabricated. I'll be there in half an hour. I changed into one of my best outfits. I grabbed all the papers I thought might be useful and drove directly to the police station in the BMW I kept in a garage across town. It was time to drop the act. Detective Sergeant Jenkins, a woman in her 40s, had kind eyes but moved with quiet authority. She seemed surprised when I walked into the interrogation room with Gavin. We both looked exactly as we were, successful businesspeople. Mrs. Riley, I must admit, you're quite different from what I expected based on the report. And what exactly was in that report? She leafed through her notes. According to Ms. Scarlett Evans, you are a vulnerable elderly woman being financially exploited by your son and daughter-in-law. She claims they stole from you, denied you access to your own money, and forced you to live in unacceptable conditions. I looked at Gavin. He nodded slightly. She also claims that when she intervened to help, your son responded with threats and aggression, and that she was manipulated and possibly psychologically coerced into siding with him. I see. And did she provide anything to substantiate this? She gave us photos of your apartment, claiming they show the poor conditions you are allegedly forced to live in. She also allegedly submitted financial documents showing irregularities in your accounts. Detective Sergeant Jenkins pulled out a folder and presented some printed photos of my apartment. Pictures taken through the windows, showing the simple furniture, the small kitchen, the carefully maintained, frugal appearance I had always upheld. Then she added more copies of bank statements, concerning the checking account I used for daily expenses. The balance rarely exceeded a few $100s. Sergeant, I said with a firm voice. When were these photos allegedly taken? She says sometime last month. And how did she get them? She says she was concerned for your safety and wanted to document your situation. Meaning she basically spied on me. Detective Sergeant Jenkins shifted in her chair. She describes it as a welfare check. Gavin leaned forward. Has anyone taken the time to truly verify Ms. Scarlett Evans's allegations? We're in the process of reviewing everything now. Good, I said, opening my handbag. Because I brought some documents you'll probably want to see. I presented the real bank statements, showing my true financial situation. Detective Sergeant Jenkins's eyes widened as she saw the numbers. Mrs. Riley, this indicates you have assets of approximately $5 million. That's correct, but the statements Ms. Scarlett submitted reflect only one account. My household account. I have various accounts for various purposes. Gavin added more documents. Sergeant, my client is a wealthy widow who chose to live a simple life out of her own decision. She was never financially manipulated, and certainly not controlled by her son. Why would Miss Scarlett say all this then? I smiled coldly. Because in reality, she was the one trying to financially exploit me. And when I exposed her, she played her last card, desperation. I handed over the envelope I had shown Lucas in the cafe, full of evidence of what Scarlett had actually done. These documents confirm that Miss Scarlett Evans contacted an elder law attorney to inquire how she could obtain legal conservatorship over me. She explicitly asked how she could gain control over what she believed to be significant assets. Detective Sergeant Jenkins looked through the papers. Her expression hardened. Furthermore, during her marriage, Scarlett secretly accumulated over $800,000 in debt. Debt she hid from her husband while encouraging him to pressure me for money. Where did you get that? Private investigators and legal research services, I said. When someone tries to have you declared mentally incompetent, you start to question their true intentions. I showed her even more. These show that she searched Google for elder law loopholes, guardianship power, and ways to prove mental instability. And all this just weeks before she started murmuring things about my mental health. The detective was silent for a while, looking at everything I had given her. Mrs. Riley, if all this proves true, Miss Scarlett has just filed a false police report. That's right. That's a serious offense. Yes, it is. Detective Sergeant Jenkins looked at Gavin.
What's your client's next step?
We want Miss Scarlett to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, he said firmly. And, I added, we want a restraining order preventing her from contacting me, my son, or any other member of our family. The detective nodded slowly. I'll contact the district attorney, but based on this, it appears Scarlett Evans has violated several laws. And now? I asked. Now we go get her. 2 hours later, I was back in my real home, the luxury penthouse where I had lived for the past 3 years. Mom, Lucas said on the phone. The police just called me. They arrested Scarlett. I know. You know? Mom, where are you? I stopped by your apartment, and it's completely empty. I looked around. Floor-to-ceiling windows, city views, and all the antique furniture and artwork Caleb and I had chosen together over our 20 years of marriage. I'm home, honey. Home? What home? I mean my real home. The apartment was just another facade. Silence. Then, Mom, I'm overwhelmed. Come to the Piedmont Road Tower Residences. Top floor. I'll explain everything. Half an hour later, Lucas sat in my true living room, looking at a space that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. You live here? I've always lived here, even when I visited you in the small apartment. I always came back here. He sank into one of my leather armchairs, holding his head in his hands. Did she really try to have you declared incompetent? Yes, and she also filed a false police report. Really? But why? Why go so far? I poured myself a glass of wine, more expensive than Scarlett probably spent on shoes in a month. Because it wasn't just about greed. Scarlett is malicious. When she realized she couldn't get what she wanted, she decided to burn everything down. And what will happen to her now? She'll be charged with filing a false accusation, attempted fraud, maybe even harassment. It's very likely she'll spend time in jail, and her reputation will be ruined forever. Lucas was silent for a while, trying to process everything. I feel like I don't know my own life anymore, he finally said. But you know what's important. You know I love you. You're a good man, Lucas. You just got involved with the wrong person. You have another chance to build something better.
Doi.
You do. I looked at my son, the man I had raised, protected, and almost lost to a woman who never deserved a place in his life. It depends on whether you can forgive yourself for not seeing who she really was, and whether you can forgive me for testing you. You were just protecting yourself. Yes, but I also tested you, and that's not right. A mother shouldn't have to test her son's love. Lucas looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw the child he had once been, before Scarlett entered his life. Can we start over? I'd like that. No tests, no games, no lies. And you know what, honey? If you ever bring another woman like Scarlett home again, I'm moving to Europe and changing my phone number. Lucas laughed, a genuine laugh, for the first time in months. Deal, he said. Deal. 6 months later, I sat on my terrace, watching the sunset paint the horizon in gold and amber, when Lucas called with the news I had been waiting for. The divorce is official now, his voice said, lighter than it had been in years. How do you feel? Free. Anxious, but free. I smiled, because I knew exactly what he meant. After so long in captivity, freedom feels both like relief and a big question mark. And Scarlett? 6 months in county jail, 3 years probation, and she has to pay back every dollar of the legal costs her lies caused. Good. She also has a restraining order preventing her from contacting you or me for the next 2 years. Even better. There was a moment of silence. Then Lucas asked the question I had been waiting for. Mom, can I ask you something? Sure. When did you know? When did you know she would do something like this? I took a sip of my wine, remembering the exact moment I saw Scarlett for who she was. It was the 2nd week after your father's funeral, when she supposedly just came over to see how I was doing. I remember exactly. She spent about 5 minutes pretending to care how I felt, and then 45 minutes asking about Caleb's life insurance, his portfolio, and the kind of inheritance you might receive someday. She was grieving too. Dad was like a father to her. No, honey. She was calculating. There's a difference. I could feel him replaying that visit in his mind, seeing it with different eyes now. That's when I decided to test her, to see if my instincts were right. And unfortunately, they were. But Lucas, you have to understand something. I didn't do all this just to prove Scarlett was a bad person. I did it to protect you. Protect me from what? From ending up with someone who would have slowly destroyed you. She wouldn't have stopped with me. Eventually, she would have taken control of every part of your life. The silence that followed no longer felt uncomfortable. It felt calm and peaceful, as it hadn't in years. I have something to tell you too, he said after a moment. What is it? I'm dating someone. My heart fluttered. A part of me hoped, a part had the instinct to protect him. Tell me about her. Her name is Riley. She's a kindergarten teacher near my office. We met at a coffee shop 3 months ago, and she doesn't know anything about our money. She thinks I'm a normal guy with a normal job who lives in a house he inherited from his grandmother. I couldn't help but laugh. You told her you inherited my house? Well, technically, it's not a lie. I mean, one day. One day? Yes. What's she like? She's normal, sweet. She volunteers at an animal shelter on weekends. She drives an old Honda Civic. She thinks the supermarket is a fancy restaurant. Do you love her? This time there was a longer pause. I think I might. But Mom, I'm scared. Scared of what? Scared of not knowing the difference between real love and manipulation. Scared of falling into the same trap again. I stood up and walked to the edge of the balcony, looking out at the city where my son was learning to start anew. My dear, may I tell you something your father always said? What? He said the difference between love and manipulation is that love makes you feel like the best version of yourself, while manipulation makes you feel like you're never enough. I like that. And how do you feel with Riley? Like I'm enough just as I am. Then trust that.
Trust yourself.
You're not the same man who fell for Scarlett's lies anymore. I hope not. I know you're not. Lucas. Yes. When you're ready, I'd love to meet her. Really? Really? And this time, I promise to be myself from the start.
No tes, no mas, no actis.
Maybe she'll be overwhelmed by everything. I could hear him shifting, imagining my penthouse. Then we'll meet in a neutral place where she feels comfortable. Would you really do that, honey? I've spent 3 years trying to be someone I'm not. Not anymore. If Riley can become someone important to you, then I want to meet her. And if she doesn't like me, then she's not the right one for you. And if you don't like her... I smiled to myself, thinking of my promise to move to Europe. Then I'll keep my opinion to myself, unless you ask me. Mom. Yes. Thank you. For what? For saving me. Even when I didn't know I needed saving. After hanging up, I remained on the balcony for a while longer, as night fell and the city below came alive with lights. My thoughts wandered to the past 3 years, to the elaborate act I had performed, to the pain of watching my son disappear under Scarlett's control. I thought of Caleb, who would have handled it very differently. He would have confronted Scarlett within weeks. But of course, Caleb never had to wonder if he was loved for himself or his bank account. That weight fell on me when he was no longer there. My phone vibrated. A message from Harper, my sister-in-law, the first one to accuse me when Scarlett started spreading her lies. Aurora, I owe you an apology. I had lunch with Evelyn today, and we compared stories, and everything made sense. I'm ashamed I believed Scarlett without listening to you. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a while before replying. Harper, I accept your apology, but I think we both learned something important. You shouldn't judge before you know the whole story. Her reply came immediately. Yes, we have. And Aurora, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself and Lucas. That took a lot of courage. Over the next hour, more messages came in from Evelyn, Evan, even cousins I hadn't heard from in years. They all apologized, all admitting they had been too quick to believe Scarlett. I replied to each of them kindly, but I made mental notes of who had judged me so quickly and how easily they had done it. Some bridges could be rebuilt, but they would never feel the same again. The last message that evening came from someone unexpected, Detective Sergeant Jenkins. Mrs. Riley, I thought you'd like to know that Ms. Evans tried to call you from jail today. The call was blocked due to the restraining order, but I thought I should inform you. It didn't surprise me. Scarlett was one of those who couldn't bear to lose, even behind bars. She was surely planning her next move, but for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't afraid of what she might try. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't pretending to be weak. I had regained control of my story, my voice, my life. I poured myself another glass of wine and leaned back in my chair. Tomorrow, the process of selling the house Lucas and Scarlett had shared would begin. I had already made a decision. The money would go to Lucas. A real gift, not a trap to test his loyalty. And tomorrow, I would also think about the future. Real plans, no lies or complicated games. Maybe I would travel, maybe I would give back, or maybe I would simply enjoy life without having to look over my shoulder. But tonight, I was completely happy. I sat on my terrace, surrounded by the comfort I had earned and the peace I had fought for, knowing that my son could finally build a life with someone who might truly love him. The phone rang again. It was Lucas. Mom, I forgot to ask you, what are you going to do now?
You mean with your life?
I looked at the city lights and let the possibilities wash over me. I'm going to live it, I said aloud. Truly live it. No more hiding. I'm going to be exactly who I am. And who is that? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. A woman who survived a challenge of her own making and was strengthened by it. A mother who stood by her son when he didn't even know he needed saving. A widow who protected the legacy she and her husband built together. I love you, Mom. I love you too, honey. More than you can imagine. I stayed outside after hanging up, until my wine was empty and the city settled into its nocturnal rhythm. For 3 years, I had lived in the shadows, testing the people around me, protecting myself from being exploited, but not anymore. I was ready to live in freedom again. Not as a grieving widow who needed protection, not as a frail old woman others thought they could control, but as Aurora Riley, a successful businesswoman, a proud mother, and the survivor of one of the most intense long-term strategies she had ever undertaken. It had cost me 3 years of my real life. Some relationships that were once very important to me, and more emotional energy than I care to admit. But it saved my son, brought down a dangerous person, and reminded me that I am much stronger than I thought. As I finally stood to go inside, I saw my reflection in the glass doors. It wasn't the tired, worn-out version I had pretended to be for so long, but my true, whole self, confident, unashamed of my past or the decisions that had brought me here. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, new people to deal with, and decisions to be made. But whatever happened, I would face it as myself. And after 3 years of pretense, that feels like the greatest victory of all.